Okay, throw me some numbers.
This is going to be a very math-heavy video. If the only thing you care about is the answer, it's 15%. That is going to be the most efficient way to do this. But the explanation is pretty interesting, so I hope you stick around for it. If you are anything like me, you've probably asked at some point, whether it be in the Discord server or Zone Chat or whatever, how should you go about T6ing something? And if you've gotten the most common answer, it would be spam 5%. This is better than going for high percents, but it's not exactly correct. So, very quick explanation of what you need to understand for this to make sense is probabilistic averages. I promise this is not as scary as it sounds, and I've already done all the math on the notepad over here. So, which we'll be referring to that again in a second. So, you need to understand that when you're dealing with intervals of averages, the expected outcome is how many times this number has to happen to reach 100%. Note, worth noting, do not conflate that with the chance going up with each roll, or you're going to get it after this number of rolls. That is bad logic. But it is still the expected average outcome. So if we look at the numbers here, the expected outcome of spamming 5% is it should take around 20 or so hits. Couple more, couple less, there's variance. And the cost of that is about 1,600. So we've established that each interval of 5% costs 80 ArcForge. Well, if you look, each interval of 10%, which is an extra 5%, only costs 65 more ArcForge. So you're getting 5% increased chances of success for only 75% of the cost. Or I'm sorry, 85% of the cost. You're getting 15% off for this 5%. Now that changes our math to this, where the expected average is now 1450. Where this becomes interesting is with 15%, because 15 is also only a 65%, or I'm sorry, 65 increase in cost, but 15% does not round cleanly into 100. So what happens then? Well, there's two ways to look at it if you don't want to get into the deep nitty-gritty of probability math, but 7 hits will give you 105. And if you look, the cost of that is 1470. So you're getting this 5% buffer window for only 20% forge. And if you remember, 80 arc forge is the cost for 5%. So getting that free 5% for only 20 more compared to the expected average of 10% still means you're getting 80 forge of value for only 20 cost. Now, this is the second part that needs to be discussed when talking about probabilities. And this is why that really simplistic, just add it up to 100 and that's your expected outcome, is true enough for most things, for most people, but not exactly true. So if you look, 6 instances of 15 is 90, which means this is very close to our expected average outcome. The bigger the interval, the bigger the variable is of the interval, the greater the range of things to hit is. So what that means is if you're trying to hit something that has a 20% chance of hitting, you are more likely to hit it. Shocking statement, I know. But that actually is important for this because trying to hit a 15% roll means the number of times you're going to have to hit it on this range is smaller. So if you're at 20 rolls, remember, the 5% doesn't change. If you're 20 rolls in, you're still just trying to hit that 5%. So the most important metric is cost per percent. And cost per percent, 15 destroys everything. So 9 expected rolls at 10% is only 90, just like 15 at 6 would be, but you can see the cost difference is way in favor of 15. 15 is significantly more efficient than everything else if you hit it before this expected mark, and because it's a bigger percent, the range at which you're expected to hit it increases as well, which means you're more likely to hit it in fewer rolls as well. The only way this doesn't work out in 15's favor is if you hit it at 5% within like the first 5 rolls. But anything past that, you are in the territory where just doing 15s is always better. Now, that's the next part I'd like to address in this, is there's going to inevitably be people that say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I've hit it like a bajillion times in just a few rolls at 5%. That's great for you, and I'm really happy for you, but that's like saying, oh, I won $100 playing slots, so clearly slots are a good investment. You need to think long-term averages. Yeah, you might remember that one time you hit it on 5% in the first roll, but do you also remember the 10 times it took you like 30 rolls to hit it? Probably not. And that's what really matters. Over the course of your time playing the game through a year, you might spend 30, 40,000 Arcforge. So getting the most value per forge is what actually ends up mattering. Because even if you save like a bunch of forge hitting a 5% within the first 5 rolls, 3 or 4 times, that's not going to make up for the average increase in cost doing that for the items that aren't that lucky. It's not about, there are some people, so basically your brain really wants to latch on and believe that you're going to be the one that has the good fortune happen to you. So really, this comes down to, do you trust the math and the averages, or do you give in to that animalistic part of your brain that says nothing bad can happen to me, I'm going to be the winner, I'm going to hit it big, I'm going to save all this forge? The true answer should be to just stick with the averages, because they're averages, that's just how numbers work. But it is really hard. You know what would make this a lot easier and would clear up a lot of confusion? If this right here had a little box over it that said 30% off, then no one would ever question it. Because really, that's what you're getting. You're getting 30% of the extra purchasing power for the same cost as if you had just spammed 5%. Okay, I hope you found this useful.